You're an executive, a founder, a senior operator. Every week you make calls that move millions of dollars, careers, and strategic trajectories. Now compare that to how much rehearsal goes into a single keynote, a board presentation, or even a podcast like this. Hours of prep, dry runs, feedback. But for the actual decision, most leaders walk into it like it's opening night with no rehearsal.
Exactly. Think about sports or music. A championship game, a concert, a big performance. It's 90% practice, 10% showtime. But in executive life, we flip that ratio. Endless slide reviews, opinions in the room, and then the decision itself is made once, under pressure, with very little structured rehearsal.
Today, we're going to fix that. This is the agentic executive, and in the next 10 minutes, you'll get a pattern for building what I call an executive simulation lab, using AI to rehearse high-stakes decisions before you spend real-world chips.
And to be clear, this is not about complex Monte Carlo simulations or hiring a team of quants. It's a lightweight, repeatable way to pressure test big calls using structured prompts and AI. One core idea, 3 moves, and a concrete action you can run this week.
At the core is a mind shift. Big decisions are performances. You can treat them as live improvisation, or you can rehearse. The Executive Simulation Lab is that rehearsal space. It's cheap, it's safe, and it gives you something executives rarely get: consequence-free reps on the same decision before it hits reality.
And the tool that makes this feasible on our regular Tuesday afternoon is AI. Not as an oracle, not as a prediction engine, but as a thinking partner that can generate alternative futures, counterpositions, and implementation wrinkles you might not see from your chair.
Hold that framing, because it matters. This is rehearsal, not prophecy. If you treat AI outputs as predictions, you lose the value. If you treat them as structured thought experiments, you gain leverage.
So let's make this concrete. The Executive Simulation Lab runs on a 3-move model: frame, fork, forecast. Think of it as the minimal viable structure for a 30 to 45-minute decision rehearsal. 1 decision, 1 time box, 3 passes.
Move 1 is frame. This is where most executives are underpowered. You want a tight, 1-paragraph decision brief that becomes the script for your simulation. If your framing is fuzzy, your simulation will be noise.
The frame needs 5 things, and you can almost hear people reaching for a notebook right now. First, the decision itself in 1 sentence. Second, the stakes, what's materially on the line. Third, the options you're genuinely considering. Fourth, constraints and non-negotiables. And fifth, how you define success and failure 12 to 24 months out.
Let's turn that into a quick example. Imagine you're deciding whether to open a new regional office. Your 1-paragraph frame might sound like this. I'm deciding whether to open a European office in the next 12 months. The stakes are our ability to win and serve enterprise accounts in the region, and roughly $5 to $10 million in investment over 3 years. My options are no office and serve remotely, a small beachhead office with a lean team, or a full regional hub. Constraints: we must stay EBITDA neutral by year 3. We cannot degrade service quality in existing regions, and we need regulatory compliance from day 1. Success means 20.
Notice what's happening there. You're telling the AI and yourself what game you're playing, what counts as winning or losing, and what's off the table. You're not asking, should we open an office, yes or no? You're defining the decision surface. The system reveals the truth when the frame is sharp.
Operationally, you can drop that paragraph straight into your AI tool of choice and say, You are my executive simulation partner. Help me rehearse this decision. That's it. That's your script.
Once you've framed, you move to fork. This is where you ask the AI for a small set of sharply different scenarios or counterpositions, not 20 variations, 3 to 5 distinct forks in the road.
A useful pattern is best case, base case, worst credible case, plus one contrarian view and one internal resistance view. That's 5 forks. You can literally prompt, given the frame above, outline 5 distinct scenarios: optimistic, realistic, worst credible downside, a contrarian external view, and the strongest internal pushback case from my own team.
The power here is contrast. You're not asking for an average forecast. You're deliberately stretching the edges of what could happen. In the European office example, your best case might show rapid adoption and talent attraction. Your worst credible case might surface regulatory friction, cultural misalignment, and leadership distraction.
And the contrarian view might say, don't open an office at all. Instead, deepen strategic partnerships with local firms and keep your organization asset light. You might disagree, but you now have a structured alternative to push against. Clarity is leverage, and contrast creates clarity.
The internal resistance fork is especially useful. Tell the AI to role-play your skeptical CFO, your head of operations, or your most jaded regional director. Ask, construct the best argument they could make against this decision, including what they'd be afraid I'm underestimating. Patterns create power, and patterns of resistance reveal where execution will break.
So, by this point, in maybe 15 minutes, you framed the decision and generated a handful of distinct forks. The last move is forecast, walking each fork a few concrete steps forward and asking, then what?
Forecast is where the simulation feels most like rehearsal. For each fork, ask the AI to walk out 3 to 5 consequences across 3 dimensions: financial, operational, and relational or political. What happens to cash, to capacity, and to people?
Let's stick with the European office. For the worst credible case, you might ask, assume we open a regional hub and things go poorly but plausibly. Walk out, quarter by quarter, what happens to our P&L, our operational complexity, and internal trust between HQ and the new office.
Now you're seeing more than just revenue projections. You're seeing the extra management layers created, the Slack channels that multiply, the subtle political fallout if Europe feels like a second-class citizen, or if they start ignoring HQ entirely.
Here's the key question you want the AI to help you answer for each fork. What would change my decision or how I implement it? Not what's the probability this exact future happens, but given that this is plausible, what would I do differently now?
You might realize, for example, that the decision is still right, but you'd only open with a lean beachhead office and specific guardrails, staged hiring milestones, clear integration rituals with HQ, and a formal check-in after 4 quarters with predefined metrics. Precision drives agency when you're explicit about those implementation constraints.
So, that's the lab. Frame, fork, forecast. 30 to 45 minutes. One big decision. And now let's map this into 3 different roles, because the pattern is the same whether you're a founder, a VP, or an independent operator.
If you're a founder, your simulation might center on a major product bet. Maybe you're deciding whether to sunset a legacy offering and go all in on a new platform. Your frame defines revenue at risk, migration timelines, customer segments affected, and a clear success metric, like percentage of revenue coming from the new platform in 18 months.
Your forks there might be smooth migration with strong uptake, slow and painful adoption, a competitor seizing your legacy customers, a contrarian view that says run both in parallel longer than you'd like, and an internal resistance view from your head of sales who is terrified of losing quota this year.
Forecast those, and you might discover that the worst risk isn't technical, it's channel confusion and sales morale. So the decision to sunset could still stand, but your implementation now prioritizes an aggressive enablement plan and temporary comp adjustments for the sales team. Same decision, radically better execution.
If you're a VP running a function, your lab might be about a high-impact hire. Say you're considering bringing in a senior leader who will reshape your org chart. The frame covers scope, budget, team dynamics, and what success looks like for that role in a year.
Your forks there, the hire becomes a force multiplier, the hire is competent but culturally off, the hire underperforms, plus a contrarian view that says, promote from within, and an internal resistance view from a current director who feels passed over.
When you forecast, you might see that your real risk is political. If the external hire stumbles, you not only lose time, you also alienate internal talent. So you tune your plan. More structured onboarding, explicit expectations with that passed-over director, and pre-committed review points where you'll intervene early if the fit isn't there.
And if you're an independent operator, a consultant, a solo builder, your lab might focus on a partnership or a big client engagement. The frame defines the scope, revenue, dependency risk, and what happens to your optionality if this goes really well or really badly.
Forks could look like dream client that becomes your anchor, great revenue but heavy dependence, misaligned expectations that drain your time, a contrarian view that says, say no and stay diversified, and an internal resistance view that voices your own fear of scarcity over optimizing for short-term cash.
When you forecast, you might realize that the real danger is not the deal itself, it's saying yes without boundaries. So you proceed, but with explicit scope, renewal criteria, and a rule that no single client can exceed, say, 30% of your revenue. That's the lab paying for itself.
Now, a few failure modes to avoid, because this is where people lose the plot. First, treating simulations as precise forecasts. AI is pattern matching on text, not generating ground truth. The value is in the questions it forces you to ask, not the exact numbers it shows you.
Second failure mode, generating endless scenarios. You don't need 30 branches. You need enough contrast to stress test your judgment. Time box the lab, 30 to 45 minutes max. If you find yourself spinning up scenario number 12, you're not rehearsing, you're procrastinating.
Third, letting the AI overcomplicate simple calls. Not every decision deserves a simulation. Use this for genuinely high-stakes moves, things that are costly to reverse, or that meaningfully reshape your trajectory. For smaller calls, a quick memo or a 5-minute gut check is enough.
And finally, don't outsource your judgment. The lab is where you sharpen it. Capture in your own words what you learned from the simulation. What would change your decision, what would change your implementation, and what you'd watch closely in the first 90 days.
Let's land this with one concrete move. Pick a single upcoming high-stakes decision, something with real downside if you're wrong and real upside if you're right. Put a 30-minute block on your calendar this week labeled Simulation Lab.
In that block, run Frame Fork Forecast once. 1 paragraph brief, 3 to 5 forks, a short forecast of consequences for each, and a sentence on what would change your decision or how you'd execute it. That's it. One tight rep.
If that single session prevents one bad hire, one misaligned product bet, or one painful partnership, the ROI is measured in months or years of avoided cleanup. This is how you manufacture clarity before you commit. Make your next move count.
If you want more tight 10-minute briefings like this, frameworks you can actually run in your own operating system, hit subscribe. Let this show be part of your executive simulation stack, so you're not improvising on the decisions that matter most.
You're listening to the Agentic Executive. Build your lab, rehearse your moves, and as always, stay agentic.